Guys, welcome to my channel. My name is ReadingBear and I hope you are ready for some more stories. And today, we'll take a look at some new entitled people content. If you enjoyed my content, please don't forget to subscribe to my channel and post some bear emojis in the comment. And now, let's dive right into the stories.
The first story is titled, Karen calls 911 and gets me swatted after I refuse to invite her to my barbecue. About 3 years ago, I married my wonderful wife and we moved into a house using the money we had been saving up throughout our relationship. We had a fairly small wedding so that we could afford our dream house right away. It was a big decision but one we're very happy to have made. We became fast friends with a few of our neighbors Henry and Liam who are around the same age as us and share a lot of similar interests with us. When we were still fairly new, they invited us over for dinner to welcome us to the neighborhood. They ended up informing us of our immediate next-door neighbor, Karen, who is known for being rude and nosy. We laughed it off initially but now I completely understand their warning. Right off the bat, Karen came across as rude to us. She welcomed us to the neighborhood by warning us to not let our dog wander around and how, if he barked too much, she would contact the authorities. It wasn't exactly the friendliest introduction, but our dog doesn't bark very often so we didn't think it would be a problem. My wife Sarah was in a car accident when she was younger which caused her to become a paraplegic. Basically, her legs are paralyzed so she uses a wheelchair to move around. Soon after moving in, we started to put a ramp where the stairs to the house are so that Sarah would be able to enter and exit the house without assistance from someone else. It wasn't a particularly difficult process but while we were out there, Karen came up to us and asked what we were doing in a very judgy tone. Sarah explained what the ramp was for, and Karen actually scoffed at her, saying that she shouldn't have moved into a house that is inaccessible to her. I chimed in saying how the house was perfect otherwise. It seemed like she was mad we were making renovations to the house, but we ignored her. A few weeks later, we were talking to Henry and Liam because we needed someone to dog-sit while we went on vacation. We were mostly making small talk but Sarah mentioned the incident with the ramp and the two men froze, sharing a glance. Before long, Henry was telling us that Karen had gone on Facebook and complained about the new crippled neighbor, and how the ramp was a major eyesore that devalued every other house in the neighborhood. We weren't exactly shocked. People are often ableist and discriminatory towards Sarah for no good reason but it was surprising that she would put it on social media where it would possibly be seen by us. Henry informed us that she often complains about other people on Facebook, and it's caused everyone to distance themselves from her. We've had other run-ins with her over the years, mostly involving the way we decorate our yard or how our dog was making too much noise, but it was never anything too concerning. We mainly felt uncomfortable around her and did our best to avoid conflict. Her husband Mark has always been kind to us. He works as a firefighter, so we don't see him too often, unfortunately. 2 months ago, Sarah and I started planning a barbecue that would be partially for the neighborhood, but we planned to invite our other friends as well. Right from the beginning we had decided not to invite Karen. We knew it would upset her, but we really didn't want her negativity disturbing our party, even if it caused a Facebook rant. We sent out invitations and began making preparations. When the day of the party came, Karen saw us setting up our backyard with extra tables and chairs as well as balloons and other decorations. She asked us what we were setting up for and we explained that we were having a get-together with some friends. She scowled, and we added that we promised to keep the noise to a minimum. This didn't seem to make her feel any better, but she went back inside. Our guests started arriving in the afternoon and we greeted them, offering drinks or snacks and chatting. Henry and Liam showed up along with a few other people from the neighborhood and we were having a great time until we noticed Karen observing from over the fence that separated our yards. We waved to her politely, but she didn't return the gesture, instead glaring at us and loudly stating, "It looks like the whole neighborhood was invited to the party but us, Mark." How rude. We just ignored her statement and started grilling food for everyone. She started playing music in her own yard to try and make it seem like she was having a good time, but no one seemed to care. Everyone was too busy enjoying themselves. The evening ended and we had begun cleaning up when Karen stormed into our yard and started yelling about how rude it was to not invite her when she was as much a friend as everyone else. I explained that we didn't consider her a friend, just a neighbor, and that the lack of an invitation wasn't intended as a slight against her or her husband. She just huffed, told us to grow up, and left. We thought that was the end of it, but it was only the beginning. We started seeing posts of hers online talking about courtesy and manners that were clearly aimed at us without naming us directly. It didn't bother us. No one was going to believe we were bad people based off of some random posts, and if they did, we didn't want them in our lives. However, one post caught our eye because of a line near the end that read, "I'll make them regret being so impolite." I wasn't sure what she meant by this, and it worried me a little bit. Sarah told me I was making a fuss over nothing, but it didn't sit right with me. I was proven right when, a week later, police in full SWAT gear and huge guns pounded on our door. I shouted that I was unarmed and immediately put my hands up after it swung open. They pointed their guns at me and yelled, asking where the woman was. "My wife's in the other room," I responded, but that didn't seem to satisfy them. I asked what was going on and they told me someone had reported a hostage being held by me at the house, so they had come to settle it. As calmly as possible, I explained that there had been some kind of mistake and that they were free to search my house. Sarah entered the room and put her hands in the air as well, supporting my statement and confirming that we had nothing to hide. They searched the house thoroughly but found nothing of interest to them. One officer stared behind to talk with us as his coworkers went around examining everything. He explained that someone had called in a tip about a hostage situation and asked if there was anyone who would want to hurt or scare us. I shook my head, but Sarah chimed in and mentioned Karen. She took out her phone and showed the officer Karen's most recent post about making us regret not inviting her to the party. He took a few notes, asked a couple more questions, and then left along with the other officers. Some of our neighbors stopped by to see how we were doing, and the whole time I could see Karen observing with a smug look on her face. That look didn't last long because within a few days the police were back at our door to apologize and explain that someone had swatted us. They were able to trace everything back to Karen. Sarah and I were quick to say we wanted to press charges and the police left to pay her a visit. What Karen likely didn't know is that reporting a false emergency to the police is a serious act and punishable with upwards of 6 months in jail as well as hefty fines. Because of her actions, she was sentenced to 5 months of jail time and a fine of $4,000. Mark has since filed for divorce and sold their house in order to pay off some of the fines. I feel bad for him since he never did anything wrong himself, but I'm glad that Karen was punished for almost getting us killed. The neighborhood seems a bit calmer now that she's gone. The next story is titled, "Don't Make Others Uncomfortable?" This is long, but it has to be to provide the needed details about what happened. About 10 years ago I worked in a team of scientists, which is almost enough to drop the mic right here, when one day our boss told me others perceive me as contemptuous. I was shocked beyond words. I certainly did not feel superior or feel contempt for anyone. I was so flabbergasted I was silent for probably 2 solid minutes. I asked for an example of when something I had said or done gave someone that feeling. He said he couldn't divulge that information. Okay, then I asked for an example he had experienced or observed himself. He said he had none. I said, since I have no clue what I've done, how am I supposed to adjust my behavior? He said he didn't know. I said, basically then, I just need to not talk. He said he wasn't sure. I knew right then what to do. I am pretty introverted, and as a child I didn't talk for years. I rarely spoke until I was about 13 years old. Got lots of notes from teachers about how quiet I was. I would answer questions when directly asked, but rarely spoke otherwise. So, my malicious compliance in this situation was easy for me. I just stopped talking except when asked a question. I made a point of smiling, showing I was listening, nodding agreement, etc. I was extremely polite and agreeable. Pretty soon some big issues came up that I had specific knowledge about. I knew how to solve them, but no one else asked. A huge conflict came up between 2 of our labs because one group wanted it one way and the other group had a different opinion. They fought and fought. People were having secret meetings in their offices to try to win. And when they finally arrived at the action, they chose it was wrong. In fact, both groups were wrong. And the whole experiment failed. It's important to know no one was hurt, no property damage or anything like that. Just a lot of wasted time and expense on materials. But I never said a word. This went on for 3 weeks. The lab's budget had to be revised. They had to cut travel expenses, which I was okay with because I didn't want to travel anyway. So, no conferences for anyone. This is a big deal for a lot of researchers because it's how we gain notoriety to be able to get grants, among other things. Finally, a colleague asked me why I hadn't spoken for so long, why I was so quiet. Was something wrong? I explained about being told others perceive me as contemptuous. She had the same expression I did when I was told. She said she didn't believe anyone had said that about me. I honestly was surprised again because I believed our boss. Then she asked me what I thought about the experiment design and why it was failing. I told her about the solution I believed would work, which was actually surprisingly simple. She recognized it had a good chance of succeeding and asked me to share the idea at the next department meeting. At that meeting she asked me again in front of everyone and I repeated what I told her. Several people asked why I hadn't spoken up sooner. I explained I had been given feedback that indicated I caused others to feel uncomfortable. The whole table of colleagues also looked stunned at me. I said I was committed to not causing such bad feelings and couldn't figure out how to communicate because the feedback didn't give me any specific guidance. Everyone looked at the director at that point and he said, "We shouldn't discuss personnel issues." It was my issue, so I said, "If anyone here perceives me as contemptuous and said as much to our boss, that's the reason I haven't been talking. If you don't feel that way about me, let me know and I will stop being silent." Someone else said we needed to hold a vote so there wouldn't be any more confusion or talking behind anyone's back. They voted 100% for me to talk normally and that they didn't agree that I was ever contemptuous. That director slowly stopped coming to work, month by month after this episode, until he was only showing up 1 day a week. Finally, he took a lab position elsewhere and one of my colleagues was promoted to director. And the experiment was a success. The next year I got a grant to keep the research going and paid for 2 people to be able to travel to the related conference to present our findings. The last story is titled, "That Door is for Members Only." I was not the malicious compliance engineer, rather just a participant. So, a while back, I worked for a country club and occasionally we would have a tournament game where people would come play a few holes at night. We also had other activates as well. Not only was it fun, but due to the abnormal hours, the tips were usually above average, so I tried to work these events when they came up. Another plus side was if you worked this party, you automatically got to come in later and were not scheduled for the morning shift. This time when the tournament party rolls around, we have some renovations going on. Due to this party being outside, we have to carry the things we need outside. However, no one thought of this and the double bay doors we normally use were no longer available. They put pallets of concrete and old tile in front of them. Was not a fire escape door, so no biggie, I guess. Due to this, now we had to carry whatever we needed down the hall, use the elevator and then go down a makeshift ramp that led to the basement so we could go out the golf cart bay doors. This not only disrupted the kitchen staff but also disrupted the cart jockeys. If we were almost at the end of the tunnel leading outside, a cart jockey was trying to bring in a cart, he had to wait and vice versa for us, and the same thing went when we used the kitchen elevator and walkway. We started getting ready for the party around 6 o'clock. We would take the needed items over to the shelter and store them there until it was closer to start time. It took a lot of time due to complexity of rolling huge tables around the entire country club, especially the elevator. Some of our tables were so big we had to shove the light fixtures up a little bit to get them to fit. Around 9 o'clock we were getting the last of the supplies when my coworker Steve has the bright idea. "Hey, it's been dark for about 45 minutes, let's go out the front door, and since it is on the same level as our storage, we have no elevator or small hallways to worry about. Well, we take one load out, load it in the cart, take the second load out, load it in the cart, no problem." Right as we were loading the third and final load, our banquet planning captain comes rushing over. No, that door is for members only. You cannot use it to load that stuff. Sorry, we figured that since no one had been golfing in the past hour it was fine. Well, it is not okay, and if I see anyone use this door for anything else you will face disciplinary actions. You cannot use this door unless you are a member. Well shit. We both proceeded to take the rest of the load out the more difficult way and then carry it all the way around back to where our cart was waiting with the other 2 loads. We drive off the event and start getting set up as it will begin soon. What we discovered later on is that no one told the last cart yoki that none of us had a key to 1 unlock the door or 2 to lock it when we leave. So naturally we tried all the usual doors we can enter in, even the one from the break room for smokers to use, nada. Steven says hold on, I'll be back. Runs to the front and lo and behold, one of the doors to the front was unlocked. Too bad it is for members only and none of us are members. The 5 of us decide it's worth the extra time to be petty, so Steven calls the banquet coordinator, our boss, and lets her know. After much discussion, she realizes we can't leave it at the shelter as it will most likely ruin our chairs and some of the wooden tables as well as the decorations we have, and she has to come in. By the time that we are finished, it is almost 4:30. It was a lot faster with no kitchen personnel or cart jockeys, but still took a while, especially with the added time it took her to get there. Well, guess who showed up at 4:30? Our general manager. He used the front door that we found was unlocked. He saw our boss and asked why she was here so early, which she replied we were locked out, so she had to come let us in. Then he asked her why we didn't just use the front doors since they were wide enough and unlockable from the inside, unlike the cart doors. This brought a hellstorm of rage upon the 5 of us. She came speed walking in her heels looking like she wanted to turn us to stone like Medusa. 5 of you all and none of you all tried the ducking front door. Really? Why the hell did no one check the bloody front doors before calling me? At this point, I was like, ah shit. Out of nowhere here comes Steven with, you said we couldn't use that door, or we would face disciplinary actions. If looks could kill, Steven would be dead. She glared at him, then her eyes glazed over, she turned around and went to go get ready for her shift. There was never another word about it, but we all laughed about it for a few weeks. By the next time we had an event outside, the construction restorations were complete, so we just used our normal doors to go out. The property is on a big slope and dug out, so what is the first floor on one side is the basement on the other. Thank you for listening.